The entrance exam loomed ahead, a pivotal milestone that would determine the protagonist's future. The selection process attracted an impressive pool of 20,000 candidates. Only 100 participants successfully secured their place in the final selection. The scoring had commenced. Drawing inspiration from a fierce battle, he secured a commendable 5th place, embodying the grace of nobility. The protagonist observed the 4th cane, a symbol of prestige held by yet another noble. He hailed from one of the most prominent families in the empire. The protagonist pondered the 3rd point. Nonetheless, in that fleeting moment, yet at the summit stood an ordinary commoner, defying expectations. Lewis stood poised, embodying a mix of confidence and anticipation, emerging from the confines of an orphanage, lacking any form of magical training. The protagonist marveled at the girl's brilliance, recognizing her as a true genius. The daughter of a revered grandmaster, having been trained since birth, he possessed an unparalleled skill set. He swiftly casts his gaze. The protagonist harnessed magic at an advanced level. He couldn't help but wonder why her face appeared so disheveled and distressed. She stumbled, her nose bleeding during the rigorous entrance exam at the academy. The protagonist had anticipated that this battle would unfold as planned. However, it would not come easily to her. As his gaze transformed into a fierce crimson, an air of intensity enveloped him. In the blink of an eye, Faye no longer perceived a mere 13-year-old boy before her. Instead, it revealed itself as a monstrous being. It was astonishing to realize that the individual facing the most significant risk at that moment was none other than him. In that pivotal moment, it became clear that the boy was the one truly at the center of attention, not her. In this world, individuals born with black hair and dark eyes often find their fates intricately intertwined with the shadows that surround them. In a harrowing moment, the vibrant red hue signified peril, as danger struck swiftly and mercilessly, silencing any cries for help before they could escape. Since the day he was born, this child had been concealing his true identity. He stepped confidently into the most prestigious magic academy in the empire. He found himself encircled by individuals who, if they uncovered his true identity, would not hesitate to carry out his execution on the spot. Centuries prior, a pivotal event had occurred that served as the foundation for the current circumstances. A brilliant figure emerged at a time when humanity found itself in chains. Faced with the threat of monsters, he pioneered a new form of martial arts infused with arcane principles. He liberated the entirety of humankind. He earned the esteemed title of the first hero. However, an intriguing twist awaited. They chose not to partake in the holiday celebrations. The hero succumbed to madness. A dark curse engulfed his thoughts, twisting and distorting them. He had committed sins that could never be absolved. They had completely erased him from the annals of history. Since that moment, anyone who possessed his distinctive features, particularly black hair, became a point of intrigue. With dark eyes that held an untold story, he met his tragic fate at the moment of his birth. Louise's adoptive mother instructed him to. He dyed his hair, a small act of defiance that kept him anchored to life. However, no amount of hair dye could change the turmoil existing within him. The last individual to wield this power had liberated all of humanity. It subsequently transformed into the most formidable threat it had ever encountered. In an impressive display of skill, the young fighter had just unlocked a new technique during their sparring match. Against all odds, he had not been expected to emerge victorious. However, let's take a moment to reflect on the preceding events. In his past existence, the young boy struggled to maintain his balance, unable to rise to his feet. The protagonist had battled illness throughout his entire life. He found himself unable to engage in combat or partake in training. He found himself immobilized, his body refusing to respond to his will. Yet the protagonist remained enthralled by his obsession. The protagonist dedicated years of his life to mastering the art of combat. He had achieved the remarkable feat of earning a PhD in the realm of martial arts science. Suddenly, his research vanished, taken by an unknown thief. His own parents had abandoned him, leaving an indelible mark of betrayal on his heart. She disparagingly labeled him a worthless leech. The protagonist yearned for the opportunity to start anew. The universe responded to his desperate yearning, granting him exactly what he sought. He awoke in a realm where the theories he had meticulously studied came to life. He was finally able to take action and make it a reality. Each evasive maneuver, each counter stood ready. Every calculation he executes in the heat of battle, he dismissed it as mere coincidence, believing it lacked true talent. He had devoted an entire lifetime to his obsession. At long last, he found himself in a body that functioned seamlessly. Now, he stood at the threshold of the Empire's most prestigious academy. The competition boasted an astonishing 20,000 candidates. The opportunity was limited to just 20 available spots. The atmosphere in the building was thick with discontent, as each noble plotted for his removal. evil. The protagonist understood that revealing his hair color would lead to dire consequences, namely, death. The ominous curse residing within him lay dormant, poised to awaken at any given moment. The young boy had made a solemn promise to himself. He promised his mother that he would purchase the orphanage for her. This marks the beginning of it all. The nun inquired whether he had brought all the necessary documents. She was engulfed in panic upon discovering that some applicants had reportedly lost their lives during the tests. In contrast, the father appeared surprisingly unfazed by the circumstances. In the worst-case scenario, he would forgo precaution and potentially bring another child into the world. It was the sole academy in the northern region of the empire that permitted commoners to sit for their examinations. Established by the esteemed Kandria family, it stands as one of the finest establishments in the entire quadrant of the galaxy. At that location, a select group of privileged individuals received instruction in magic, guided by the finest instructors available. Many renowned mages, hailing from humble beginnings, emerged victorious from that esteemed institution. The father believed that it was the ideal setting for his son to grow and learn as well. Lewis acknowledges Julian's insight, expressing his aspiration to achieve the rank of Grandmaster. He aimed to become as powerful as a tractor, driven by the ambition to acquire ownership of the church's orphanage. The nun beamed with joy, admiring the child's remarkable selflessness. Moreover, the academy was likely to temper Lewis's fiery temperament. He felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude towards his mother, recognizing that her sacrifices were the very reason he was alive today. In his previous life, the protagonist harbored dreams of becoming a formidable fighter, yet he was hindered by the frailty of his sickly disposition. His passion for bizarre acrobatics and cinematic techniques remained unwavering, a testament to his unique flair. He approached the subject with such dedication that he ultimately earned a PhD in it. However, an envious rival appropriated his research, leaving the protagonist powerless to reclaim what was rightfully his. His parents ultimately deserted him, having never truly cared for what they deemed a burdensome leech. His yearning for a second chance at life was so intense that it ultimately manifested into reality. Initially, his striking hair and eye colors startled everyone around him. Thus, the nun made the heartfelt decision to adopt him. She found herself with ample free time and a life relatively devoid of significant troubles. Lewis cherished the presence of his beloved family, accompanied by Julian and the nun, who were likely a secret couple. The dilemma lay before him. The protagonist reflected on the harsh reality of their world. Commoners were frequently subjected to humiliation. A brash individual voiced his disdain, declaring it audacious for an ordinary person to even entertain the notion of becoming a Grand Master. The protagonist contemplated the idea of resigning himself to the grim reality of his existence. The cruel individual deliberately shoved the protagonist's mother, relishing the opportunity to humiliate someone less fortunate. An overwhelming urge to commit a crime surged through him, electrifying his very veins. Julian gently reminded him to concentrate on the upcoming exam. The nun reminded him of his promise to stay out of trouble. Lewis offered an apology, acknowledging the gravity of his actions that had nearly crossed into criminal territory. The bullies were compelled to retreat, their plan for humiliation having backfired as they anticipated a violent reprisal. A new noble made their entrance, capturing the attention of those gathered. The protagonist observed that this individual unmistakably embodied the traits of a noble, adhering to the classic archetype with their blonde hair, slender frame, serene demeanor, and notably pale complexion. Lewis believed they were all alike and felt poised to dominate them effortlessly. He vowed to ascend to the status of Grand Master, determined to demonstrate his prowess to all. His true desire is to safeguard the things that hold significance in his life. He dismissed everyone else with a wave of indifference, recognizing that this was all too characteristic of the typical noble mindset. Another challenge loomed as statistics revealed that typically only 20 individuals succeeded in passing the exam, while that year a staggering 20,000 candidates vied for success. Julian recognizes Lewis's unwavering stubbornness. Driven by an unwavering determination, he relentlessly pursues his desires until they are within his grasp. He quickly comes to the realization that he is among the youngest attendees present. A mage announced that the examination was on the verge of commencing. The academy was under the leadership of its esteemed director, Aronian. The background characters gaped in astonishment at his presence, while the protagonist pondered the intricacies of martial arts in a realm intertwined with magic. The Grandmaster was not the ultimate rank. There remained further heights to ascend, specifically to the esteemed titles of Sage and Saint. The initial obstacle presents itself as the daunting task of ascending the staircase, vigilantly monitored by seasoned students. Following that, they would need to secure an item. However, only a mere 1,000 remain accessible. The signal to commence was given. The extras seethed with frustration, eager to progress to the next next stage of their journey. However, the moment had arrived for the veterans to join in on the festivities as well. One among them already radiated a palpable aura of malevolence. He ruthlessly trampled upon the frantic, desperate souls who amounted to nothing. One by one, the unfortunate individuals succumbed to exhaustion, collapsing into unconsciousness. Those who had failed to reach the summit were engulfed in fear, bewildered by the nature of the unforeseen assault they had just witnessed. The protagonist recognized that what had enveloped him was merely a manifestation of killing intent. It was not an assault in the traditional sense. Rather, it was the unmistakable aura of the man seeping out, akin to a foul odor escaping into the air. Lewis firmly believes that those who cower in fear and lose their composure have no rightful place among them. The veteran observes that the young men possess a bravery that surpasses their peers. However, the environment made it clear that commoners were not welcome. There would be no affirmative action or assistance for those of lesser status. Determined to assert his dominance, he decided that Lewis would be made to kneel. His energy bewildered those around him, leaving even the most oblivious individuals in a state of confusion. The protagonist's expression remains completely unchanged. Having immersed himself in rigorous training amidst the wilderness, he pushed his limits with relentless determination, embodying the spirit of a true warrior. The protagonist had grown accustomed to the grip of fear that often accompanied him. It was yet another monotonous Tuesday, offering nothing but the familiar drudgery of routine. Lewis approached the veteran with unwavering determination, his resolve evident in every step he took. He was poised to reveal to the nobles the true nature of malicious intentions. It was at that moment that the extras recognized the hidden drawbacks of experiencing a Sweden-level quality of life during their upbringing. Lewis halted his strike just an instant too late, the momentum of his action already set in motion. The playboy opposite him visibly startled, his confidence wavering in an instant. The bystanders stood in awe, clearly taken aback by the unexpected arrival of the young boy, radiating an unmistakable aura of strength and confidence. Lewis announced his departure, abandoning a veteran who was left trembling in fear. The protagonist seized the sheet of paper, ready to embark on the next stage of his journey. The protagonist was taken by surprise when the veteran attempted to exact revenge from the shadows. Growing up in the favela offered its own advantages. One had to remain vigilant at all times. Lewis retorted without hesitation, showcasing his quick wit. The playboy found himself increasingly humiliated as he faced off against a poor kid who, despite his meager background and lack of social connections, effortlessly outclassed him. The director entered the room and announced to the playboy that their companion had successfully passed the first exam. He firmly believed that every candidate deserved equal treatment, for in the eyes of monsters, status held no significance. They saw only flesh. Following the reprimand, the playboy expressed his remorse with a heartfelt apology. The unusual color of the protagonist's hair caught everyone's eye, prompting the director to express his growing concern. After all, it seemed that only Kakashi could sport gray hair without drawing any strange looks. He feigned ignorance, claiming he did not understand the remark. The director promised that should the boy gain admission, he would concoct a unique potion to help conceal his unusual traits. Uncertain of the implications behind the statement, Lewis resolved to prepare for the second test, though a sense of deep suspicion lingered within him. As he strides away, the playboy's gaze follows him, simmering with envy. It was a pivotal moment, as the director made his inaugural appearance during an exam, further shattering the already fragile ego of the playboy. In a vast arena, anticipation filled the air as everyone prepared for the upcoming second stage. 1,000 nobles had already traversed the grand hall. One of the individuals collided with him, revealing that same troublesome character from earlier in the story. He muttered to himself that no one was going to come to his aid this time. The other individual, eager to please, confidently asserted that their companion was destined for doom. Lewis declared them to be utter fools. This infuriated the antagonists, igniting their rage. He confidently asserted that the Grandmaster possessed far superior judgment compared to their own. The noble's fury boiled over, a desire to shatter the protagonist's face consuming him. After a tense few seconds of intense scrutiny, he resolved to throw a punch. With just 2 fingers, Lewis effortlessly brought the young one to a state of utter humiliation. The once noble man found himself rendered immobile, a prisoner within his own body. Lewis decisively severed one of the asshole's meridians. When misfortune strikes, it comes like a torrential downpour, unleashing chaos without mercy. This is a lesson the protagonist has learned well. With precision and force, he delivered a powerful strike to the noble's abdomen. The obsequious followers panicked at the unfolding scene, their leader being violently hurled backwards in a chaotic display, attracting the gaze of fellow candidates. Meanwhile, the playboy struggled to rise, desperately battling against the urge that threatened to betray him. The protagonist remained unable to feel his arm, and each movement demanded an immense amount of effort. The protagonist suspects that he has fallen victim to poisoning. Lewis revealed that he had been practicing martial arts, admitting he had restrained his abilities at the request of his mother. However, he possesses his own set of moral boundaries. He understood that if one enjoyed striking others, they must also brace themselves for retaliation. It was an unwritten rule of engagement. At that moment, the aristocratic figure seized Lewis's arm, reminding him that they were still in the midst of the examination. Such an action could result in his disqualification. Lewis retreated, creating distance between himself and the situation at hand. Yet, the nobles continued to incite him with relentless taunts. The blonde boy inquired ominously if they recognized his identity, casting an unsettling atmosphere over the group. Suddenly, the thugs resembled frightened rich mafia members, their bravado evaporating in an instant. The group reached a consensus and resolved to depart. They had reached their limit of humiliation for the day. Lewis perceives all nobles as identical, relying on their elevated status to navigate and resolve issues. The protagonist recognized the hypocrisy in others, reflecting that if he possessed status, he would wield it even in mundane situations like waiting in line at a bakery, rendering figures like Diddy and Epstein beside him mere children in comparison. Returning to the narrative, the blonde man praised Lewis for his strength and courage, proposing that they join forces if Lewis was willing. The enticing offer swiftly captured the interest of several girls eager to join Cain. Before long, the young noble found himself encircled by opportunists seeking to exploit his wealth. Many are astonished by his remarkable abilities, unable to fathom that he is merely 13 years old. Lewis responded with a mocking scoff, clearly dismissing the remark. A colossal magical whirlwind erupted within the arena, captivating the attention of all present. The director, it seemed, had a penchant for indulging in his own self-importance. The moment had arrived to evaluate the candidate's strength. A radiant golden symbol manifested on each of their chests, shimmering with an otherworldly glow. Cain came to the realization that it was a symbol associated with the earth attribute. In the blink of an eye, a suffocating weight enveloped everyone, rendering their bodies achingly heavy. As they grappled with the burdens weighing heavily upon them, the journey to the arena loomed ahead, stretching far into the distance. Several of them struggled to maintain their footing. Suddenly, a lone boy caught everyone's attention as he casually strolled through the scene, seemingly unfazed by the surrounding chaos. Even Cain couldn't resist the urge to steal a glance. The protagonist approached the director with a composed demeanor. Lewis emerges as the first to complete the test, leaving onlookers increasingly astonished by his swift achievement. Cain had endured 3 grueling years of relentless training to achieve that feat, fully aware of the challenges that lay ahead. The director wielded his magic with precision and intent. He arranged to showcase a selection of weapons for the candidates, should they wish to make use of them. Without hesitation, Lewis lunges forward and seizes a sword with swift determination. With anticipation building, he prepared himself for the exhilarating chaos that lay ahead. The thrill of violence was about to unfold. It was time for a fierce confrontation. As they prepared to engage in a brutal clash, the director vanished from sight, instructing them to unleash the slimes. Yet no one possesses any understanding of what that truly is. Suddenly, a swarm of creatures emerged, descending from the heavens above. Successfully blocking an attack earns the fighter 1 point, while deftly dodging it grants 2 points. Defeating a single opponent equated to 5, and the score ultimately determined one's rank. Only 100 contestants advanced to the next stage of the competition. An extra dismissively regarded the slimes as incredibly foolish. He charged forward, determined to score as many points as possible. However, the slime demonstrated remarkable resilience and refused to simply succumb to its fate. He lunges forward, delivering a savage blow that sends the man sprawling, causing several teeth to shatter and scatter across the ground. The slime harnessed its momentum, pivoting sharply to pursue its next unsuspecting victim. As panic enveloped the crowd, a fresh wave of creatures emerged, intensifying the chaos. The examiners were undoubtedly reveling in the excitement of the event. A teacher announced that this year, the class included students from both the Oranka and Durahan families. They were on the verge of breaking a new record. The bespectacled professor remarked on the intriguing presence of several commoners this year, including their noteworthy student. They eagerly anticipated that he would reveal something even more impressive. The professor observed with concern that, up to this moment, Lewis had yet to take a single step. The protagonist found himself exasperated by the incessant ramblings of the extras, who seemed incapable of speaking anything meaningful. Rumors circulated that the commoner had succumbed to fear. A furious creature charged directly at Lewis, brimming with unrestrained rage. The young protagonist skillfully evaded the attack with remarkable agility. The slime continued to target the other minor characters, leaving a trail of chaos in its wake. They were not as fortunate. The mystery of how he accomplished such a feat remained remained unsolved. The creatures were becoming increasingly audacious in their actions. He launched a relentless barrage of attacks, growing in intensity with each strike. Lewis sensed the presence of several figures encroaching upon him. A jealous figure lurked in the shadows, secretly wishing for something truly sinister to befall him. As he closed his eyes, the scene shifted, drawing the audience into a vivid flashback. He urged his friends to hurl stones in his direction. Acknowledging the potential hazards, they cautioned that such actions could prove to be exceedingly perilous. Lewis reassured everyone that it was all right, as he had something important to test. Trembling with anxiety, the boys hesitantly chose to follow the whims of this unpredictable lunatic. In his previous existence, Lewis arrived. He developed a theory and honed his mind to respond with lightning speed. In theory, this strategy would enable him to evade any incoming attack. As he sifted through the overwhelming details, Lewis deftly weaves through the barrage of flying rocks, skillfully avoiding each one. His friends regard the situation as utterly insane and inquire about how he is managing to achieve it. Lewis explained that the technique was known as battle void calculation, a method designed to predict future events. The relentless tide of slimes surged forward, undeterred and unyielding. Completely resolute, the young protagonist was fully committed to pursuing his goals. Math had always been a strong suit for him, and he excelled particularly in the realm of physics. With remarkable agility, he skillfully evaded every creature that crossed his path. With a newfound accumulation of points, he prepared to test the sword, eager to discover whether it would prove effective. With a single, swift slash, for creatures were obliterated from existence. Cain, alongside the teachers, is filled with admiration and awe. At that moment, Cain felt an unwavering certainty deep within him. The protagonist recognized the necessity of forming an alliance with the skilled martial artist. Lewis detects the approach of another creature. Just as he prepares to make the crucial score, Cain leaped into action at the very last moment, intervening just in time. The protagonist disapproves of that. Cain dismisses the complaint entirely, steadfast in his conviction that he had not taken anything from him. He hurled the remains of the slime with force towards a nearby target. He casually pointed out a few additional items, claiming they were stolen from others. He now seeks to discover whether the protagonist will assist him in amassing even more points through theft. Cain expressed his determination to position himself among the elite ranks. A challenge was proposed, pitting the protagonist against an adversary in a competition to determine who could accumulate more points. Lewis finds himself unexpectedly drawn to the sudden surge of confidence, leading him to accept without hesitation. The terms were simple. The loser must obey the winner, and Cain felt no hesitation in accepting that outcome. The enraged noble seethed with fury, his anger unmistakable. He was present with the intention of sabotaging the protagonist. The moment had arrived for him to set the plan into motion. The opportunist exploits the situation to his benefit. A tumultuous encounter ensued as he grappled with one of the slimes. The protagonist successfully vanquished the formidable creature. However, he remains oblivious to that reality. A flurry of arrows surged forward in pursuit, trailing closely behind it. A tremendous force reverberated through the air. He couldn't help but scoff at the arrogance of the antagonist, who believed he had finally captured their ally. However, he is taken aback by the sight that greets him. Lewis deftly snatches the arrows from the air with his bare hand. The jealous individuals were rendered utterly speechless. Cain's concern deepened as he recognized the underhanded tactics being employed by his adversaries. Fueled by anger, the antagonists chose to unleash another barrage of gunfire. One of the individuals prepared to unleash his hidden technique. He meticulously replicated the arrow. Cain deftly cleaved through the air, dispatching each of them with precision. However, he remains oblivious to the concealed trick awaiting discovery. He stood on the brink of a vicious confrontation, his fate poised to be sealed in an unforgiving manner. A torrent of blood surged through the air, painting a vivid and unsettling scene. The protagonist valiantly defended the noble, but in doing so, he sustained injuries. Cain felt a surge of anxiety wash over him, fully aware that Lewis was the intended target of those foolish individuals. The teachers caught the underhanded maneuver, with one even contemplating how to deal with those troublemakers decisively. The headmaster dismissed the notion, confidently asserting that the troublesome individuals would inevitably self-destruct through their own reckless actions. Shifting his sword stance with precision, Lewis inquired of Cain whether he was familiar with baseball. A formidable creature charged directly towards the protagonist, a young man recognized for his remarkable genius in physics. He struck the creature with the blunt edge of his sword. He hurled the monster through the air as if it were nothing more than a mere ball. By sheer coincidence, it hurtled directly towards the antagonists. The force of the blow was so intense that it instantly incapacitated one of them, leading to their immediate elimination. Given the extent extent of the damage to his chest, it was evident that several ribs were likely missing as well. Kane found himself captivated by the game frequently enjoyed by the common people. The protagonist remained acutely aware that a handful of envious rivals still lingered in the shadows, and Lewis had already pinpointed his next target. He launched a creature directly toward him. The blow landed squarely against the fool's face, delivering a flawless impact. He hurtled out of the arena, his mouth devoid of teeth and any chance of victory. Only one remained now. The young man, filled with dread, issued a warning to the commoner, threatening that any interference would provoke retaliation from the upperclassmen. Kane deftly positioned his foot in the man's path, anticipating that it would send him stumbling out of the arena. The protagonist seized the opportunity to express his gratitude to Lewis for rescuing him from the perilous arrow. The two of them were beginning to forge a genuine friendship. Kane inquired whether the young man was familiar with the other noble families, introducing himself as a member of House Aranka. Throughout the years, prominent families have given rise to exceptional masters, wielding significant influence in their respective spheres. Lewis comes to the understanding that a diverse array of nobles resides in this land. As the protagonists continued to vanquish monsters, an air of tension enveloped the background extras, heightening their anxiety. The protagonist realized that the available points were dwindling rapidly. Blinded by reckless rage, the group fixated their attention on the sole commoner among them. He realized that Master Kane was under attack, prompting him to spring into action and offer assistance. This time, Kane stood poised to wield his own sword, fully committed to maintaining a vigilant approach. The introduction of several girls, who undoubtedly possessed the qualities of main cast characters, added an intriguing dynamic to the story. The protagonist resolved to confront the nobles who had scorned their friend Miljana for her impoverished status. Lewis finds himself under relentless assault from a flurry of attacks, and, should he continue to find the back of the net, the situation would undoubtedly spiral further out of control. At that moment, he caught sight of the young woman working at the staff desk. The redhead, equally fierce in temperament, matched the intensity of the situation. A man exuding an air of mystery seemed captivated by the scene before him. The protagonist wields a colossal hammer, relishing the thrill of delivering powerful blows to his adversaries. He found the experience far more exhilarating than battling slimes. He began to swing the hammer with a fierce intensity, resembling the frantic rotation of a helicopter rotor. He stood poised to eliminate anyone who dared to draw near, and in that moment he resolutely commits to taking action, eliminating a group of formidable adversaries along the way. One of the teachers expressed concern about the situation, while the headmaster reveled in it, finding amusement in witnessing the students engage in conflict. The teacher seated beside him warned that the elimination of all the nobles would pose a significant problem. The headmaster asserted that the academy operated under its own set of rules, rendering public opinion inconsequential. At that moment, he emerged in the center of the arena, poised to conclude the second exam. It was time to reveal the individual scores. At last, the burdens that had weighed heavily upon them lifted, leaving a sense of relief in their wake. The injured were receiving care as healing potions were administered to them. Lewis is captivated by the enigmatic power that unfolds before him. In addition to his financial struggles, he comes to the startling realization that the cost is exorbitantly high: 3 silver coins. Kane reassured the young man to take it easy, affirming that despite his noble status, he would treat him with kindness and respect. At long last, the results were unveiled to the eager crowd. However, the protagonist's name fails to appear. The onlookers regarded the situation as outrageous, while the headmaster proudly announced that the top 5 had shattered every existing record. In 5th place stood the girl with striking blue hair. Following closely behind her was the blonde nobleman, Kane. Above him stood the fiery-haired member of the Durahan family, causing a wave of anxiety to wash over the protagonist, as he anxiously awaited the moment his name would finally be called. As the anxious moments ticked away, his heart raced until the announcement came. He had achieved a remarkable 887 points, securing him 2nd place. The unexpected turn of events left everyone utterly astonished. Kane reluctantly conceded his defeat in the bet, inquiring about the consequences that awaited him. Lewis announced that a decision would be made at a later time. Overhead loomed a figure boasting an impressive total of 888 points, Neil, the eccentric individual with striking red hair. He was already deeply intrigued by this year's competition. The extras stood in astonishment at his imposing stature, particularly given that he hailed from a common background. The girl from the Durahan family, driven by her ambition to excel in the competition, was the only one who disapproved of it. The veteran nobles seethed with indignation, their pride wounded by the younger generation's defeat at the hands of commoners. Such an occurrence had never transpired in the storied history of the academy. Both commoners, having originated from orphanages, received financial support from the academy. They acted on the belief that true power remains indifferent to social status. Those who have departed must continue their journey forward. Cain sought to discover who the mightiest commoner was, yet the protagonist had little interest in pursuing that inquiry. The final exam was set to take place deep within the heart of a forest. The situation unfolded as both a grueling survival test and an intense battle royale. Badges were distributed to each candidate, and they would soon be cast into the depths of the forest. His objective was to amass badges, employing any means necessary to achieve that aim. The stakes were high. Losing one's badge meant immediate disqualification, with only the final 10 survivors earning a place beyond this perilous challenge. Cain felt a strong reluctance to part ways with the protagonist at that moment, urging his new friend, Lewis, to exercise caution as they prepared to separate. He now understands the reasoning behind the peculiar format of the last exam results, which intentionally left an uncomfortable tension lingering in the air. The headmaster brimmed with enthusiasm, eagerly anticipating the impending chaos as the students prepared to clash in a fierce battle. Lewis strides through the forest with unwavering resolve, his determination to emerge victorious guiding each step. He unexpectedly encounters one of the nobles. He harbored a burning desire for revenge against the injustices of his social class. Before long, the young protagonist comes to a startling realization. He is encircled. A few troublemakers had taken to the treetops, concealing themselves among the branches. Lewis uncovers the unsettling truth that the event organizers had carelessly leaked his location. The first nameless figure burst through the entrance, urgency etched across their features. However, he struggles to make contact. The others were eagerly anticipating the opportunity to humiliate him. The opponents struggled to land a blow on him as their efforts proved futile. The arrows hurtling toward him were swiftly intercepted and neutralized. At that moment, Lewis found himself under relentless pressure from all directions, besieged by the swarm of worms. Once more, he experiences the strange and enigmatic sensation. The atmosphere buzzed with an electric energy. The protagonist needed to defend against the impending attack with utmost caution. His momentary distraction caused him to. He narrowly avoids being skewered by one of the fools. Now, the incessant complaints from the man filled the air, claiming that the protagonist was continually evading him. Lewis comes to the unsettling conclusion that he is unable to foresee the path of the magic. He resolved to turn the enemy's own strength against them. The nameless figures surged forward once more, reigniting their assault. Lewis had been anticipating that moment with keen anticipation. He swiftly evades the initial strike. With a deft flick of his sword's tip, he expertly destabilizes his opponent, sending them off balance. The axe hurtled through the air, striking another unfortunate soul with a resounding crash. It was clear that this individual would be left reeling, likely facing blindness after such a brutal impact. Once more, the figure concealed among the trees launched an attack. Lewis anticipated the strike and deftly raised his defenses to block the incoming attack. He used one of the extras as a human shield. Seizing the opportunity, he swiftly lunged forward to snatch the spear from the man's grasp. He launched it directly at the archer with precision and force. After that, he skillfully dispatched each of the worms with his sword. He collected a handful of badges along the way. Despite enduring a painful beating, one noble's fury erupted as he shouted at everyone to launch another assault. To his astonishment, a shadowy figure settled into the branches of the tree. Cain arrives to offer his assistance to the protagonist. The other nobles erupted in panic, realizing that Cain had also battled his way through a horde of adversaries. With all of them subdued, Cain conducted a thorough interrogation to extract crucial information, revealing the reason behind his decision to offer assistance. With the incessant chatter of the boisterous bystander filling the air, Cain hurled a crossbow directly at his opponent's face. Lewis felt a wave of relief wash over him, grateful that his new friend Cain was safe and sound. He remarked that they were merely low-level nobles who had only recently acquired the knowledge of magic. Reassuringly, he handed a few badges to the protagonist and suggested that things might become chaotic, proposing they join forces. Lewis firmly rejects the offer, and from the shadows, a girl emerges, expressing her agreement. Driven by her immense pride, she challenges the protagonist to a duel. Cain revealed that the girl, Faye, was the daughter of a prestigious grandmaster. Lewis inquired whether the two of them shared a friendship, prompting an unmistakable expression of offense to cross Cain's face. Cain reluctantly confessed to having fought her once, revealing his own recklessness, and in that moment, the protagonist understood that Cain had suffered defeat. He urged them to cease their flirtation and engage in battle instead. Cain interjected, asserting that she had already mastered magic at the apprentice level, suggesting it would be wiser to simply disregard her presence. Seething with rage, she branded them as cowards. The protagonist eagerly embraced her challenge, driven by a curiosity to discover whether the noble family's true truly possessed the strength they claimed. Faye declared her commitment to fairness, promising that she would refrain from using magic. Without a moment's pause, she lunges into the fray. The tip of her spear appeared to pierce right through the boy's body. However, he deftly intercepts it with one of his arms. He prepared to retract her weapon. Faye deftly twirls the spear in a graceful arc, showcasing her remarkable skill. She relentlessly pressured the protagonist with an obsessive fervor. He prepared to conclude his life with just a few decisive strikes. Her powerful strikes cleaved through the earth, leaving destruction in their wake. The Proctor teachers observed the entire scene unfold before them. The spear techniques of the Doorhand family were nothing short of extraordinary, and it was evident that the commoner possessed remarkable skill as well. Despite the doubts surrounding him, many remained unconvinced that the young protagonist could emerge victorious. They resolved to seek the headmaster's opinion on the matter. Despite his fondness for Lewis, he concedes that the odds are stacked against him and anticipates his likely defeat. The battle unfolds as a relentless clash of bodies and wills, showcasing the girl's fierce determination. So far, Lewis had skillfully evaded each and every one of her attacks. This only fueled her anger further. At that moment, the protagonist successfully achieved his goal. He sought to uncover a miraculous equation from the realm of modern physics. Seizing the moment presented by the small opening, he launched his own offensive. Faye adjusted her grip. Otherwise, she would lose the ability to clap altogether. The protagonist skillfully evaded the oncoming strike. As the momentary pause lingered in the air, Faye found herself struck by his impressive ability to deftly evade her attempts. Lewis reassured her, suggesting that it wasn't as difficult as she imagined. This only fueled the girl's determination even further. She prepared to unleash her formidable Holy Spear technique against him. However, she had not anticipated the protagonist's exceptional aptitude for calculations. He understands that the range of weapons presents a significant challenge. However, the technique was riddled with several dangerously fatal flaws. His most significant vulnerability lay in close-range combat. If the young warrior could swiftly infiltrate their defenses, he would be able to effortlessly intercept their oncoming assaults. Faye had already unraveled his strategy. With a swift motion, she deflected his sword, decisively demonstrating its ineffectiveness against her skills. Lewis felt a wave of unease wash over him in response to that revelation. The girl confidently proclaimed that her spear technique possessed no flaws, transforming into a whirlwind of deadly blades. The teachers marveled at her skill, recognizing that even her father had taken a considerable amount of time to master that particular technique. Nothing would remain of the commoner. Against all odds, Lewis showcased remarkable defensive skills, surprising everyone around him. Another vulnerability of Spears lies in his energy accumulation. Should he continue to play defensively, an opportunity for attack will inevitably arise, or his sword may shatter. One outcome or the other is bound to occur. At last, the protagonist succeeded in uncovering the elusive missing piece of the calculation. However, just as he prepared to strike his adversary, the sword betrayed him at a crucial moment, leading to his demise. The excitement surged among the crowd, enveloping everyone in its infectious enthusiasm. Faye admired the impressive display but felt a pang of regret at the sight of the shattered sword. The protagonist comes to the sobering realization that fortune has not been on his side. To compound his frustrations, the girl was convinced that he had restrained his full strength throughout their confrontation. Lewis expressed his preference for observing intently before unleashing his full potential. He was prepared to unleash every ounce of his power. He knew that relying solely on his fists would simplify the challenge ahead. The protagonist's stance revealed a wealth of information about his confidence and readiness. Faye realized that no opportunities for escape presented themselves. The moment had come once more for him to launch another assault. She lunges at him with the relentless precision of a drill. Lewis remained poised, anticipating the precise moment of contact with Kane. Shouts erupted from the sidelines, filled with panic as onlookers expressed their fears about the deadly technique being employed, worried that the protagonist would suffer serious injury. Lewis sprang into action, his hands flying with skill and precision, evoking a sense of pride in Naruto. He confronts the technique head-on, using only his bare hands. He deftly intercepted the assault, rendering it completely ineffective. The moment had arrived for the protagonist to step into the spotlight and showcase his talents. To the astonished onlookers, he effortlessly halted the spear with merely his hands. The bewildering events left everyone grappling with confusion, struggling to comprehend the unfolding chaos. The girl's anger intensified, fueling her fury further. He effortlessly dispatched the spear with a powerful kick. She swiftly seized it once more, putting some distance between herself and Lewis. He found himself entirely cornered by her presence. Employing this remarkably agile technique, it appeared that she was poised to launch an assault from multiple angles. Lewis must concentrate with all his might. He skillfully redirected each and every one of the incoming attacks. The headmaster discovers that it is a remarkably intriguing secret technique. He had never encountered anything quite like it before. To add to the indignity, it was a commoner who achieved this remarkable feat. This time, he successfully lands a hit on the girl. She narrowly avoids falling by instinctively bracing herself with the spear. Although she remains physically unscathed, her ego suffers a devastating blow. She inquired about the nature of the terrifying technique that had captured her curiosity. Lewis explains that it is merely a defensive technique in martial arts. The protagonist executed a series of spins, skillfully neutralizing the rotation of the spear. He resolved to demonstrate its practical application. Faye observed as the protagonist burst in, fueled by a wild energy. The rapid pace of her movements captivated everyone around her. He attempted to land a blow, but the strike fell short, missing its target entirely. The protagonist evaded each attack with a remarkable intuition, as though he possessed the ability to foresee what was coming. Kane found himself rubbing his eyes, as if to dispel the disbelief that clung to him. He gazed at it as if captivated by the delicate grace of a butterfly in flight. These techniques were acquired by the protagonist during his previous life as a boxer. He moved with a series of delicate, rhythmic steps that seemed almost weightless. He lunged towards the girl once more, driving his fist into her stomach with all his might. Faye suddenly becomes aware that the cramps coursing through her could lead to an embarrassing accident. Kane stood in stunned silence, realizing that the true essence of the protagonist revealed him to be a formidable force, a genuine monster. The headmaster was taken aback, his expression revealing the surprise of the unexpected turn of events. Even in the absence of magic, few could hope to overcome her in such a scenario. The protagonist couldn't help but wonder if this child possessed an innate genius for unarmed combat. Faye rose to her feet once more, declaring that the battle was far from over. Coming from a family steeped in pride, she was determined not to concede defeat easily. This time, she decided to engage without relying on the spear, a move that seemed rather foolish. The protagonist patiently awaited the moment of contact. The confrontation between them unfolds with fierce brutality. Lewis found himself nursing an injury to one of his legs. The impact of the strike resonated powerfully, prompting him to commend the girl's impressive technique. Faye confidently proclaimed her expertise extended beyond just wielding a spear, demonstrating her prowess by unleashing a formidable technique that left the protagonist in awe. However, Lewis stood resolute, fully prepared to confront the challenge head-on. The two combatants exchanged powerful blows, reminiscent of the fierce battles found in Saint Seiya. Lewis relished the thrill of battling a truly formidable opponent, a dream he had cherished and pursued throughout his entire life. The more he yearns for it, the more his heart ignites with an unquenchable fire, until his eyes glowed a fiery red, and this, a surge of dark energy manifested ominously behind him. Faye found herself enveloped in confusion, completely unaware of the unfolding events around her. It was as if she had just encountered a demon. A wave of fear paralyzed her entire body, leaving her vulnerable just as the protagonist struck. The shot was precise and unerring, striking its target with flawless accuracy. The incident clearly unsettled the director, leaving him visibly shaken. Faye soared through the air, propelled by an unseen force, reaching astonishing distances. Several background students turned their attention, taking notice of the unfolding scene. They were taken by surprise that an ordinary commoner possessed the ability to achieve such a feat. Suddenly, one of the individuals was struck by a violent headache. Overwhelmed by an inexplicable wave of nausea, he suddenly doubled over and vomited. The protagonist experienced an unsettling and profoundly terrifying sensation. The protagonist smirked as he realized that the plans of those envious fools had completely unraveled. One of the nobles declared that if the legends held any truth, their young charge could not be allowed to survive. Lewis lunged at Faye once more, poised to deliver a fierce onslaught. She expertly deflected several blows using the resilient bones of her face. However, its effectiveness leaves much to be desired. The protagonist's rage was intensifying with each passing moment. Faye exerted every effort to mount a defense, acutely aware that his strength had increased significantly. She was being overwhelmed entirely. At this pace, it seemed inevitable that she would soon receive an invitation to escape her profoundly painful existence. In a moment of desperation, she summoned her magical techniques as a final resort. She deftly intercepts his attack, showcasing her remarkable skill and agility. However, the force of the impact proves to be incredibly brutal. Faye was propelled backward, her body soaring through the air. He crashed through a cluster of trees, leaving a trail of splintered wood in his wake. Lewis appeared to regain his composure. The protagonist found himself bewildered, questioning the very nature of the events that had just unfolded. Perhaps it was magic at play. At that that moment, Cain arrived, inquiring whether everything was all right. One of the antagonistic figures made his entrance, declaring the protagonist had lost his emblem, leading to his disqualification from the competition. Lewis suddenly discovers that the emblem emblazoned on his chest has ignited in flames. The arrogant noble attempted to expel him, but Cain valiantly stepped in to defend him, asserting that it had been merely an accident. Confident in his perceived advantage, the arrogant director believed that his comprehensive view of the situation positioned him at the top. He once again instructed the young man to leave. Faye suddenly barged in, her appearance a shocking testament to the brutal beating she had endured. To Lewis's astonishment, she remained alive against all odds. The arrogant extra provocatively inquired whether she intended to intervene. However, she abruptly interrupts him, instructing him to be quiet. Acknowledging the loss of his emblem due to the fire, she expresses her sincere apologies for the situation. Having accidentally wielded magic, she surprised Cain with an unexpected apology that left him in disbelief. As Lewis fervently expressed his apologies, she assured him that they would face each other in a duel once they had both gained acceptance. The jerk erupted into laughter, convinced that both of them were destined for elimination. Faye ripped a fragment from her clothing, an action driven by urgency and determination. He presented it to Lewis as a token of gratitude, a reward for his victory over her. At that moment, he had amassed a total of 14 emblems. This would remedy the loss he had suffered during the confrontation with her. He felt a growing frustration that the weaker competitors had yet to be eliminated from the fierce competition. Once she had grasped her spear, she inquired about the implications if Lewis sought to gather additional emblems. Cain remarked on the serendipitous alignment of their thoughts, revealing that he had been contemplating the very same idea. With enthusiasm coursing through their veins, the two of them set out, eager to gather more emblems. An instructor approached them. The boy declared that Lewis had been eliminated after suffering his defeat. The emblem shimmered in the light as the envious boy remained behind, consumed by bitterness and a burning desire for revenge. With only a handful of candidates remaining, the protagonist realized that if Faye continued to eliminate more hopefuls, his chances of acceptance would significantly increase. The reasoning behind this was enigmatic, but the stakes were clear. He too found himself perplexed. The nobles were consumed by envy. He harbored a dark wish for the boy's demise. Building upon the peculiar sensation one of them had experienced earlier, he now grasped the true nature of Lewis. The protagonist arrives at the realization that he must also master the art of magic. Should he gain admission to the academy, he would merge his martial prowess with the art of magic. He realized it was time to return home, yet his clothes lay in tatters, leaving him uncertain about how to explain the situation to his mother. He realized that revealing the truth would only deepen her worries. As he pondered his thoughts, an enigmatic figure stealthily approached from behind, poised to deliver the final blow. However, the assault is abruptly halted. Lewis had spent his formative years navigating the harsh realities of the slums, honing a keen sense of street smarts that would serve him well in life. The assassin remained puzzled, unable to comprehend how he had drawn attention to himself. Lewis remarked that he detected the unmistakable scent of blood, which lay exposed without any attempt to mask it. A new wave of assassins emerged, poised to eliminate the protagonist. Lewis recognized the formidable skills of his adversaries, understanding that he could no longer afford to underestimate them, particularly with those still lurking in the shadows. Seizing the opportunity created by Lewis's momentary distraction, one of the villains launched a sudden attack. The protagonist stood on the precipice of despair, contemplating a final resolution to his tumultuous existence. Thanks to his honed martial arts skills, Lewis swiftly evaded the assassin's lethal strike. Seizing his attacker's weapon, he prepared to defend himself. With a swift motion of his sword, he forcefully brought the man crashing to the ground. However, he needed to evade the next strike as it approached with an unexpected subtlety. He possessed superhuman reflexes and was more than capable of defending himself in a fight. The assassin remarked on the young man's capabilities, confirming that the intelligence they had gathered was accurate. It was now time for them to unleash their magic in a powerful offensive. Magic arrows soared through the air, aimed directly at Lewis. He skillfully evaded the incoming attacks. He watched in astonishment as they effortlessly punched through the wood, rendering it almost weightless. Lewis prepared to employ another one of his formidable techniques. The protagonist prepared to harness his inner energy, ready to unleash it with determination. It erupted in a ferocious and savage explosion. With his newfound abilities, Lewis surged forward with enhanced power and speed. He charged forward, skillfully evading each arrow that flew towards him. The protagonist stood defiantly before the assassins, prepared to unleash a torrent of suffering upon them. The first individual, having just been struck with a kick, he chose to honor Vegeta, departing with a fractured arm that served as a testament to his determination. Lewis skillfully maneuvered to avoid several more arrows whizzing past him. Just as he was maneuvering forward, an enemy attempted to seize him from behind. The protagonist skillfully deflected the incoming attack, yet the pain surged through him with an intensity that felt unbearable. Once he had put a considerable distance between himself and the situation, he recognized that this adversary possessed a level of strength surpassing that of the others he had encountered. Lewis found himself utterly encircled by the menacing thugs. He felt utterly out of place, as if he were a hamburger in Somalia, surrounded by an environment that contrasted sharply with his own expectations. He deftly evaded a flurry of magical attacks. At last, he collapsed onto the ground, utterly drained of energy. This arrangement proved to be ideal for the assassins. Frustrated by the exhaustion of expending magical energy merely to launch arrows, they resolved it was time to eliminate the commoner once and for all. However, Lewis's eyes sparkled with renewed enthusiasm. The protagonist seized the assassin's weapon with a swift motion. He wielded the weapon with precision, delivering a decisive blow directly to his opponent's throat. Though it appeared uncomplicated, it ultimately devastated the man's vertebrae. Grasping the weapon firmly in his hand, Lewis unleashed a barrage of gunfire at the assassins, successfully striking several of them. Only the individual who appeared to be in charge managed to survive. He remarked that the child was truly remarkable. Lewis observed that the enemy remained unyieldingly composed, displaying no sign of emotion as his underlings fell one by one. He aimed the arrows at him, determined to strike. The young man failed to land a single shot. Had it not been for the constraints of his profession, the assassin would have eagerly welcomed the opportunity to mentor Lewis as his apprentice. The protagonist braced himself, skillfully intercepting the powerful strike from the ominous dark hammer. He soared through the forest as if propelled by a powerful swing, reminiscent of a baseball rocketing into the sky after a perfect home run. Suspended high above the ground, he encountered the malevolent ninja once more. He boasted confidently about his superiority as a fighter, declaring himself to be on a higher level than others. Determined to bring closure to the situation, he took decisive action. He struck Lewis once more with that accursed hammer. Once more, the ninja hailing from the hidden village of Envy lunged into action, launching a fierce assault. As the dust settled, he realized that his target was still alive. The truth was that the protagonist's unusually fragile body had already endured significant damage. Once more, the ninja hailing from the hidden village of Plagiarism launched a surprise attack. He conjured a colossal shadowy formation, declaring that not even God could rescue the child at this point, regardless of his desire to intervene. The dark energy surged forward with the unstoppable force of a freight train, threatening to overwhelm everything in its path. Lewis comes to the profound realization that death is not an option for him. A myriad of tasks and responsibilities still beckon for his attention. His eyes blazed crimson with fury. Brimming with vitality, he launched an aggressive assault, declaring his determination to survive. The two energies clashed with the ferocity of colliding stars, creating a brilliant display of power. The dark ninja found himself taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. Following the immense shockwave, Lewis struggled to drag himself across the ground, his body racked with violent coughs. The ninja approached, remarking that the situation felt unusual. The protagonist believed he was engaged in a battle against an opponent of equal standing. He finally understood the reason behind his client's request for this job. It was time for him to put an end to the boy who had revealed himself to be a true monster. Just when the tension reached its peak, an unexpected figure chose to intervene in the battle. The ninja swiftly evaded the oncoming strike, knowing that failure to do so would result in his demise. As he attempted to leap upward, he quickly realized that he had become utterly encircled. In that moment, he was overwhelmed by a powerful force. Lewis remained in the dark about the identity of his mysterious benefactor. At that moment, the director of the academy made his entrance. He recognized that the young boy had maintained his composure amidst chaos, persevering through the turmoil. However, he now required a tonic to regain his strength. The director cast a scrutinizing glance once more at the lifeless form of the assassin. The protagonist is determined to uncover the identity of the individual who issued that contract. With his strength waning, the ninja questioned whether the Grand Master was truly prepared to shield such a monstrous threat. He was merely the starting point of a much larger story. Upon delivering the message, the assassin's body erupted in a violent explosion. The director suddenly comprehends the gravity of the situation. The assassin's impressive professionalism suggested that he was entangled with formidable and perilous individuals. Lewis marveled at the remarkable healing potion, watching in awe as even his fractured bones mended seamlessly. The protagonist realized that the director's appearance was no mere coincidence. The moment had arrived for him to reveal the reasons behind his unwavering tendency to rescue him in circumstances like these. days. The director indicated that the discussion would take place at the boy's house. What truly unsettled the protagonist was the late hour, knowing that his mother must be anxiously fretting about him. He charged forward with determination. Before departing, the headmaster addressed a small creature, instructing it to tidy up the surroundings. In the protagonist's hometown, his mother found herself under the relentless harassment of several nobles. Whispers circulated among the townspeople, cautioning that she had erred in her decision to repair the mill in an attempt to reduce her tax burden. It was now her turn to face the consequences, surrendering her own body as payment. The individual who had made that suggestion soon found himself on the receiving end of a violent altercation, resulting in the loss of several teeth. The protagonist arrived just in the nick of time to provide salvation. The day unfolded, filling his mother with overwhelming joy. However, a flicker of concern washed over her as she assessed the disarray of his clothes. In addition to being utterly battered, they were also drenched in blood. One of the nobles who had previously tormented the protagonist during the exam now found himself on the receiving end of violence, declaring with a sneer that the young hero was in grave peril. They intended to relay all of this information to the Lord. The headmaster arrived on the scene, clarifying that a misunderstanding had occurred. The presence of a true grandmaster instilled paralyzing fear in the hearts of those cowards. With a menacing tone, he commanded them to convey his regards to the Lord. The group instantly lowered their heads in submission. As they hurriedly departed, the grandmaster approached the protagonist's mother, eager to share an important message with her. Everyone had gathered inside the house, filling it with a lively energy. The headmaster's gaze fell upon the millstone that the nobles had been discussing, and to his astonishment, it began to stir of its own accord. It became evident that many aspects of the surroundings operated in a similar manner. The nun remarked that the protagonist was responsible for creating all those gadgets, completely unaware of their intricate workings. She inquired whether her son had been a source of trouble, but the headmaster assured her that quite the contrary was true. The boy possesses extraordinary talent. It was a phenomenon he had encountered solely within the sacred texts of Gaia. During the era when humanity was dominated by monstrous beings, an extraordinary genius emerged. He devised intricate arcane martial arts, and alongside his companions, he liberated humanity from its shackles. The day transformed into a celebration, marking the momentous occasion of Liberation Day. In the scriptures, he was revered as the first hero. The nun listened in awe as the captivating story unfolded before her. Lewis remarked that, in the narratives of others, there often exists no figure reminiscent of a hero. The headmaster revealed that the hero manifests in a new guise, taking the shape of a man with black hair and piercing dark eyes. However, that revelation held monumental significance. Access to it is reserved solely for the leaders of humanity. Though the hero successfully rescued everyone, a wave of madness engulfed his heart, leading him to lose control. He had committed unforgivable sins, resulting in his complete erasure from the annals of human history. The protagonist's descent into madness was the result of a lingering curse that haunted him. The protagonist pondered whether he bore the same burden. This was the chilling reason behind the grim practice of ending the lives of newborns with black hair and dark eyes. The protagonist refuses to conceal his true identity simply by changing the color of his hair. The protagonist's mother appeared visibly shaken by the revelation, her earlier encouragement still echoing in her mind. She reaffirmed her belief in her son's goodness, grappling with the weight of her words. Lewis urged her to take a deep breath and regain her composure. The protagonist realized that if the headmaster truly wished to eliminate him, there had been numerous opportunities to do so. The Grand Mage was taken aback by the remarkable wisdom displayed by the young boy, astonished that he had also managed to harness his inner turmoil. The boy possesses the qualities necessary to emerge as a new hero. Even in the facade of a tranquil world, an undercurrent of unrest simmered just beneath the surface. A vast darkness perpetually loomed in the shadows, ever watchful and menacing. The headmaster had once dismissed the legends as mere nonsense. Now, he seeks to lead the protagonist toward the righteous path that could ultimately save humanity. Owing to the diligent efforts of Faye and Cain, numerous candidates faced elimination. In other words, the young boy succeeded, and the headmaster inquired whether the protagonist was interested in becoming his personal student. Lewis finds the wager intriguing and inquires about the consequences if the child loses control. In a swift motion, the headmaster effortlessly sliced the apple that Lewis was holding into two perfect halves. He ominously warned that should the boy ever spiral out of control, he would not hesitate to extinguish his own life as well. The following day, one of the protagonist's friends expressed astonishment upon discovering that he had received an invitation from the headmaster. The protagonist felt a profound sense of honor wash over him, yet curiosity stirred within as he pondered the headmaster's connection to the storied history of that place. The headmaster instantly recognized recognize the true identity of the self-proclaimed hero. Lewis questions the necessity of his mother overhearing everything that had transpired. The headmaster explained that he had made the decision to relieve them all of their burdens. The truth weighed heavily on him. Once the revelations came to light, his family would be in peril. It was imperative for the boy to fortify himself, as the hardships he had faced were merely a prelude to what lay ahead. Lewis wholeheartedly concurs with everything presented. The following day, a group of snot-nosed children rush towards Lewis, their energy palpable in the air. The little girl feels a pang of distress at the news of his departure from the orphanage. The boy vowed to return during breaks to visit all his friends. The girl earnestly compelled him to make a genuine promise, sealing their commitment with a pinky swear. His attention was abruptly drawn when a voice informed him that a noble's butler awaited his presence. A massive carriage stood idle outside, its imposing presence commanding attention. The butler of the Aranka family approached, having received word that the young master had extended an invitation for their boy to visit the mansion. Upon reading the letter, Lewis comes to the realization that Kane is eager to fortify their friendship before the commencement of classes. With a determined nod, he embraced the invitation extended to him. The group set off towards a neighboring city, determined to continue their journey. Lewis stands in awe, utterly astonished by the sheer magnitude of the place. Kane stood outside, eagerly anticipating the arrival of the fighter. The protagonist felt a surge of joy at the thought of becoming classmates with him. Lewis acknowledged that his success was entirely due to Kane's support and felt a deep sense of gratitude towards him. Unable to engage in combat during the exam, Kane expressed a strong desire to spar with him on several occasions. Particularly, he recognized the urgency to deepen his understanding of magic and familiarize himself with the intricacies of the academy. At that moment, an imposing girl appeared, inquiring about the source of the commotion and the identity of the unfamiliar figure. She was none other than Kane's mother. Kane acknowledges Lewis as a friend, yet there is an unspoken tension that lingers beneath the surface. Her demeanor exuded an even greater sense of intimidation as she firmly instructed him to silence himself. She advised Kane to be discerning in his choice of friends. Aranka House stood as a threshold that only the most discerning should dare to cross. He believed that a commoner was unworthy of such opportunities, dismissing the idea as a mere waste of time. She inquired of Lewis his motivations for approaching her son, questioning whether he sought to gain wealth or influence through their connection. He tossed a ring towards the boy, declaring that it contained enough wealth for him to sustain himself for a lifetime. It was time for him to take his leave. She spoke with an air of unwavering confidence, as if she possessed absolute certainty in her words. Kane felt a wave of embarrassment wash over him as he struggled to comprehend his mother's actions. Despite the circumstances, Lewis maintained his composure, bowing respectfully as he acknowledged their newfound friendship with Kane, attributing it to his admiration for Kane's impressive skills. He bent down and retrieved the ring from the floor, clutching it tightly in his hand. He inquired whether she genuinely believed that Kane was worth so little. Irritated by his presence, she commanded the guards to expel the commoner from her vicinity. Kane intervened, asserting that his friend possessed greater talent and had shattered all the examination records. However, his mother exhibited a stubborn disposition, convinced that the tales she heard were nothing more than fabrications. Lewis asserts that remaining by Kane's side will allow him to grow even stronger. This revelation caused the witch to spiral into a frenzy. The atmosphere shifted dramatically as the alpha of the house strode through the entrance. The mention of his son's growing strength piqued his curiosity, drawing him in with intrigue. The mere sight of William instantly shifts the woman's tone. She approached him, attempting to articulate her thoughts. The protagonist, feeling overlooked, watched as Kane bowed respectfully to his father, seemingly oblivious to her presence. Lewis confidently presented himself, sensing an aura that radiated with the same intensity as that of the headmaster. William inquired about the truth of Lewis's statement, and the boy affirmed it. Determined to demonstrate his strength, William unleashed his energy with full intensity. Lewis is engulfed by a chilling and overpowering aura of murderous intent. He struggled to catch his breath, suddenly aware that the sensation no longer felt like mere intent. It seemed overwhelmingly vivid to him. Lewis experienced a searing pain in his chest, as if a cannonball had struck him directly. A horrifying force of will enveloped Lewis, leaving him with the agonizing sensation that his very soul was being torn asunder. Such skill was to be anticipated from a grandmaster. Owing to the rigorous training he had undergone over the past few years, he skillfully deflected the malicious pressure, thwarting its menacing advance. The protagonist began to summon his formidable power, which surged and radiated intensely around him. William's expression reflected his evident admiration, for he was clearly taken aback by the unfolding spectacle. What he witnessed was the indomitable spirit of that humble commoner. The protagonist braced himself to confront the formidable will of the lord of the house directly. Their powers collided with the ferocity of two enraged beasts, unleashing a shockwave that reverberated through the air. Until it ultimately reaches its conclusion, Cain sank to his knees, overwhelmed by the weight of his circumstances. He hurried to assist him, both of them gasping for breath. Intrigued by the aspirations of the commoner, the family head inquired about his motivations for seeking greater strength. Lewis expresses his deep desire to safeguard the ones he holds dear. As he departed from the group of boys, William reflected on his son's lackluster willpower and determined that it was time for him to gain wisdom from the commoner. This act brought complete humiliation to Cain's mother. William inquired if she had any thoughts to share. However, she remains utterly silent. With matters resolved, Cain beckoned Lewis to join him on the training field. In the midst of a well-equipped environment, Cain expressed his regret for the events that had transpired. Lewis also releases his tension, acknowledging that the most challenging aspect had been contending with Cain's father. Cain remarked that his father prioritized merit above all else, believing Lewis to be the ideal son for him. However, Lewis was acutely aware that his worth had only been measured in comparison to Cain. He recognized that as a unique expression of affection. Cain pondered deeply over the matter. He had seldom ventured beyond the confines of the mansion, even during his childhood. The protagonist's memories unfold with an exquisite simplicity. The protagonist dedicated his days to a relentless cycle of training, nourishing his body with food and seeking rest. The protagonist's father had always aspired for him to achieve the greatness of a sage, just as his grandfather had in days gone by. Driven by a yearning for his father's recognition, the boy persistently pursued the action, even in the absence of true understanding. Cain experiences a suffocating sense of confinement, as if he were trapped in an enormous prison where every action demands the scrutiny of a watchful guard, all while being surrounded by insufferable sycophants. Above all, the protagonist yearned for a life that embraced normalcy. He felt liberated, soaring through the sky with the grace of a bird. Regrettably, that was not the life that awaited him, for in a world where power reigns supreme, strength is the ultimate currency. The protagonist had lost interest in the pursuit of further strength. Each time Cain swung his sword, the force of his strikes resonated with a fierce determination. He inches closer to shattering the chains that bind him. Cain's father had also graduated from the academy, and now Cain was determined to follow in his footsteps, aspiring to grow even stronger in order to gain the freedom he craved. In light of this, he placed his trust in the protagonist. William requested a thorough investigation be conducted. The butler remarked on the child's unusual nature, noting that he had employed mysterious techniques throughout the examination. The protagonist triumphantly overpowered Faye in combat, despite her wielding powerful magic. Furthermore, it was evident that the director held a deep fondness for William, as he had bravely confronted assassins to safeguard him. He comes to the stark realization that the boy is engulfed in a web of trouble. The butler inquired about the reason behind his decision to permit it. William's mind fixated solely on a singular thought. He pondered the potential growth his son could achieve by spending time in the company of that remarkable child. At that moment, Cain intensified his efforts, striving to surpass his own limits. William concedes that his son may possess a superior talent for assessing people than he himself does. The patriarch observed the fight intently as he spoke. Lewis narrowly avoided delivering a brutal blow to his new friend's face, just in time to evade a swiftly enchanted sword strike aimed at him. It was evident to Cain that the situation was far too simple to decipher. He hadn't anticipated being dismissed so abruptly. At that moment, he finally understood why Faye had been defeated as well. After seizing the boy's sword, Lewis inquired whether Cain sensed that something essential was lacking in his fighting style. Cain revealed that he had mastered secret techniques that had been handed down through generations within his family. The protagonist suggested that there might be an alternative solution. This event plunged the young boy into a complete crisis. Lewis carefully sheathed the sword they had been wielding. He drew a small dagger from his belt and inquired whether Cain truly desired to surpass his father. William's gaze sharpened with each passing moment, intensifying as he observed the unfolding scene. Without any warning, the two young men sprang into action, launching a surprise attack against him with swift martial prowess. In the realm of arts, speed emerged as the most formidable weapon. The protagonist understood that speed alone was not the ultimate goal. It was a crucial moment for decision-making, demanding swift reactions. Cain's remarkable speed harmonizes perfectly with his wind attribute, making the mastery of thrusting attacks a formidable challenge. The protagonist realized that following in his grandfather's footsteps was not a path he needed to take. After all, William had achieved the status of a top-tier master through his own unique efforts. The protagonist revealed a crucial truth to him, emphasizing that if Cain wished to grow stronger, he must learn to adapt. anicapped. Lewis inquired whether he was prepared for that moment. Cain asserted that he was unlike the other nobles, who were often characterized by their arrogance and laziness. Instead, he resolved to do whatever it took to attain his freedom. Lewis emphasized that the key to success lies in mastering footwork, strike swiftly and retreat. Cain was resolute in his intention to demonstrate to his father the depth of his skill and unwavering determination. Thus, the two of them resolved to launch their assault. Cain accelerated his pace, harnessing the power of wind magic to propel himself forward. The butler's concern was palpable, yet William reassured him with a subtle gesture that everything was under control. He skillfully evaded the kid's strike. He was poised to replicate the same actions with Lewis. Daggers, known for their swiftness and exceptional flexibility, serve as lethal instruments in the hands of a skilled wielder. Employing precise maneuvers, Lewis endeavored to encircle his target, William. He felt a flicker of admiration. He skillfully evaded each blow with minimal exertion. Cain advanced once more, harnessing the power of his wind magic. Now, both of them focused intently on striking the same target. Cain marveled at the newfound lightness of his movements, reveling in the exhilarating sense of agility. With the daggers in hand, he experienced a sensation of weightlessness enveloping his body. It seemed as though he embodied the spirit of a bird as well. He relishes the sensation and quickly grasps the skill. William senses the mounting tension in the air. The protagonist nearly finds himself taken by surprise by Cain and his newfound abilities. However, the instant they ventured too near, a menacing aura enveloped him, radiating a sinister pressure that unsettled those around. He questions whether Cain is truly discarding the family techniques solely to demonstrate his willpower, deeming such a strategy naively misguided. After being thrust backward, the boys charged in once more, their energy palpable and unrestrained. He strategized to corner William for the impending strike. Despite their various attempts, nothing proved effective. William inquired whether that was the extent of their efforts. He nearly succeeds in restraining his son with just one hand. Determined to take control of the situation, he resolved to launch an aggressive counterattack. Determined to bring the confrontation to a decisive conclusion, he steeled himself for the final act. Cain recalled Lewis's wise counsel, pondering that sometimes fleeing did not signify weakness. It was a calculated strategy. As he halted his frantic movements, the protagonist caught his father off guard with a sudden and unexpected attack. Cain surged forward, harnessing his wind technique to propel himself past him with remarkable speed. With Lewis by his side, the protagonist prepared to strike once more. William found himself trapped in a tight corner, with no escape in sight. Earlier, Lewis had elaborated on a rapid switch strategy. The protagonist understood that switching weapons could yield unpredictable outcomes. He could achieve it with swift movements as well, to unbalance his opponent. This tactic proved invaluable when he orchestrated feints and lured his opponent into traps. William found himself under immense pressure from the brats, who were relentless in their demands. Cain skillfully closed the distance, launching a deliberately slow attack. In that moment, William came to the stark realization that it was already too late. He had fallen victim to deception. Cain managed to snag a portion of the patriarch's coat, yet the battle was far from concluded. They were determined to continue demonstrating their capabilities. It was not until William intervened, declaring that it was time to put a stop to the ongoing situation. He summoned his son and sternly advised him to uphold the family's honor. Cain exuded an extraordinary charisma that set him apart. Fueled by determination, William firmly declared that he would never engage in such an act. He then began to unravel the situation with intensity. The protagonist employed a diverse array of feints, skillfully wielding daggers while strategically utilizing retreat as an effective tactic. He found the entire experience surprisingly fascinating. He was astonished to discover such knowledge coming from the child. Lewis relished the practice, feeling a twinge of disappointment as it came to an end. For Cain, this marked a pivotal moment. His father had finally acknowledged him, filling him with joy. Grateful for Lewis's support, he now sought to express his appreciation through a meaningful gift. Inside the library, the young protagonist was introduced to an array of books. Cain reiterated that he would not have discovered his own path without the support of others. He generously bestowed upon Lewis a collection of remarkably valuable items. He stumbled upon tomes dedicated to the prestigious academy, alongside magical treatises seldom glimpsed by commoners throughout their entire lives. He marveled at the fundamentals of magic and martial arts, recognizing the astonishing depth of their interconnectedness. One of them began to discuss the enchanting details of the magical awakening ritual. Cain accomplished the task at Gaia's sanctuary, and it required a cost of 10 gold coins as payment. He realizes that amount represents years of the orphanage's entire budget. Cain had confidently assured him at the academy that he would handle it without charge, making it clear that paying such an amount was simply out of the question. He presented those gifts to support him in his endeavors. He sought clarification on whether their promise had been fulfilled, to which Lewis affirmed positively. However, he soon recognized that he required additional funds. The protagonist contemplated a career in pharmacy, drawn by its lucrative potential. However, he soon recognized the opportunity to leverage his knowledge from a past life, envisioning the creation of innovative products that could generate income. Lewis inquired about the family's ties to merchants. He anticipated that his friend would soon uncover the reason behind his inquiry. A week later, the academy buzzed with excitement as it hosted its grand admission ceremony. Lewis beams with delight as he dons the school uniform, embracing its significance. The alluring scent emanating from him captivated a nearby girl, leading her to speculate that the protagonist must belong to the wealthy elite. She approached him with keen interest, eager to give him a tour of the surroundings. Lewis expressed his gratitude before introducing himself. Not recognizing his surname, the gold digger instinctively presumed he must be the illegitimate son of a wealthy man. As the emperor aged, tensions began to rise between the heirs and the nobility, leading to a series of fierce clashes. The chaos seeped into the academy as well, where the headmaster exerted every effort to maintain order, yet the institution remained in disarray. The struggle for power and resources within the institution was relentless, with those who failed to secure enough credits facing expulsion. She encouraged Lewis to continue putting in the effort and striving for success. He inquired about which side his family was currently supporting. Suddenly, a voice interjected into their discussion, identifying the commoner with surprising familiarity. Brian expressed his delight at meeting the remarkable commoner, referring to him affectionately as "our boy." Her disappointment grew as she realized he bore the unmistakable scent of affluence. She stormed away, convinced that her time had been squandered. Brian remarked that the academy resembled a miniature version of the empire itself. The world was filled with individuals relentlessly pursuing their desires. Kane arrived shortly after too, seeking out their young friend. Brian approached the other freshmen, offering his support and encouraging them to seek him out whenever they needed assistance. However, he was also a cunning strategist, driven by his own ambitions. Kane felt a surge of curiosity about their conversation, but Lewis brushed it off, assuring him that it was nothing of significance. Kane revealed that the individual in question was the chancellor's son, yet their relationship remained distant. The red-haired girl remarked on his decency, her comment catching both of them off guard as he unexpectedly appeared. Miljana accompanied her as well. The boy expressed his gratitude to her for the support during the exams, but she insisted that he had earned his success through his own efforts. Determined not to be outdone again, she vowed that in their next encounter, victory would belong to her. Kane unmistakably harbored dislike towards her, constantly finding himself feeling challenged in her presence. Miljana urged her friend to quicken their pace and complete the registration process. Kane extended his hand, passing Lewis a bag that was noticeably heavy and nearly brimming with contents. He diligently adhered to the young boy's instructions, and together they crafted several exquisite perfumes. Uncertain about the potential for profit, Kane harbored doubts, yet the protagonist radiated confidence in their endeavor. Recognizing their high demand and elevated price, Kane decided to purchase one as a gift for his mother. A hidden truth lingered between them, but now the protagonist shifted his attention back to the demands of the academy. Lewis received a credit card, and his instructor expressed hope that he would one day become a great master. A faction of background students expressed disdain for the presence of a commoner among them, particularly after rumors circulated about Sheetha's expulsion. The man responsible for hiring assassins to eliminate Lewis had an older brother named Jess, a fact that only deepened the tension surrounding their actions. It became evident that the foolish individual had already set his sights on the protagonist. Jess envisions an exhilarating and enjoyable experience ahead. He planned to gradually drive their son to the brink of madness. In a grand hall, the headmaster warmly welcomed the new students. It became evident that everything had been a deception. The crowd of students gathered in the hall far exceeded the number who had successfully passed. They were meant to embrace a sense of pride in their presence, recognizing that this moment marked the beginning of their lives. The protagonist understood the necessity of relentless self-improvement, striving to become stronger and more skilled. The moment had arrived for the freshman representative to deliver his speech. Neil, the muscular man, strode into the room completely unclothed. The unexpected stature of the commoner caught everyone off guard. One of the teachers seethed with anger, but the headmaster intervened, restraining him from escalating the situation. Neil observed the tense exchange unfold. He commanded everyone's attention, urging them to listen closely. The protagonist's ambition is to triumph over all challengers, leaving no one untested. The students bristle with a sense of intimidation and simmering anger. Neil continued to assert his dominance, declaring that everyone around him was weak and that he alone possessed true strength. The prospect of teaching someone like him posed a significant challenge for the teachers. Neil revealed that he had a primary target in his sights. With great precision, he hurled his axe toward. It comes to rest at the feet of someone truly significant. Clearly, the protagonist. He found himself surprised by the sudden surge of attention directed towards him. Neil declared that they were about to engage in battle. Cain seemed to have taken the bait, an eager glint in his eyes revealing his genuine interest. He stepped between them, asserting that the ceremony was still in progress. Neil inquires whether the protagonist is feeling fear, much like the boisterous individual beside him. A dog that has mastered the art of barking, its sole means of communication. Cain felt a deep-seated loathing toward that situation. Fueled by a surge of frustration, he charged forward to confront the arrogant extra with a powerful punch. However, the protagonist swiftly reaches for his. He reached out and gently urged his friend to take a breath and relax. Neil boasts confidently that he is capable of defeating both adversaries simultaneously, dismissing them as mere cowards. Brian approached them, recognizing their impressive talents, and proposed that they make an effort to get along. In a place like this, selfish individuals such as Neil often find themselves digging their own graves. The redhead dismissively instructed him to leave. The protagonist held no interest in those he deemed weak, and Brian felt a sting of offense at the dismissal. The other students eagerly anticipated the unfolding drama, viewing Neil merely as an ordinary commoner, nothing more than a source of entertainment. Cain reflects on the harsh reality that for some individuals, lessons can only be learned through difficult experiences. Just as Neil prepared to engage in a confrontation, a teacher intervened, halting him in his tracks. The protagonist realized that the location had strict regulations governing duels, and such an approach was explicitly forbidden. Typically, those who violate the rules face expulsion, a fate that loomed over Neil. He quickly composed himself, realizing that maintaining his composure was essential to avoid being expelled. He declared that the battle would need to be postponed for a bit longer. He vowed that he would eventually meet Lewis, whether sooner or later. As the teacher concluded the ceremony, a sense of liberation swept over the students, granting them the entire day to themselves. The protagonist found himself bewildered by the unexpected surge of attention directed towards him. Cain blamed the entire situation on the bothersome girl, inciting Faye's ire with his remark. Ultimately, the protagonist recognized that the situation was her own doing, stemming from her confrontation with him during the final exam. As time expired, their match ended in a draw. However, Neil became aware of the whispers regarding her defeat to Lewis. Relief washed over her as she realized that a significant upheaval had been averted in that moment. Cain urgently instructed them to leave the area immediately. It appeared that all eyes were fixed on them following the recent events. Within the bustling confines of the academy shop, Lewis comes to the startling realization that everything around him carries an exorbitant price tag. The clerk informed him that they also offered budget-friendly items, such as a pillow priced at just 30 silver coins. However, as she reveals more of herself, Lewis becomes increasingly uncomfortable. Cain firmly asserts that everything at the academy is overpriced, emphasizing the significant importance of money and credit within its walls. Lewis purchased the starter kit, parting with 100 silver coins. Fortunately, he had managed to turn a profit from selling perfumes, and with the remaining funds, he planned to make a generous donation to the orphanage. Recognizing the vital role potions play in his training, he understood that accumulating wealth was imperative. As the red-headed girl departed, she was acutely aware that tomorrow marked the day of Lewis's awakening ceremony. Meanwhile, the protagonist's mind fixated solely on thoughts of accumulating wealth. As he navigated the hallways of the dormitory, a sense of apprehension washed over him. He fervently wished for a private room and dreaded the thought of sharing space with an eccentric roommate. He caught sight of an intriguing activity unfolding within one of the rooms. Items were being hurled into the hallway by an unknown individual. A group of inconsiderate individuals erupted into a heated argument, their voices clashing in a chaotic discord. At the center of the group stands a young man, enveloped in an aura of silence. One of the individuals seized the boy by the collar, challenging him with a provocative question about whether he was ready to fight. At that moment, a finger lightly tapped the jerk's arm, drawing his attention. A peculiar sensation coursed through his arm, unsettling him. Lewis issued the warning to make it clear that fighting was strictly prohibited in that place. One by one, the bullies gradually began to retreat. However, the man who had been stung in the arm seethed with anger, poised to retaliate. The protagonist swiftly raises his defenses, expertly positioning himself to block the impending attack. He skillfully maneuvered the situation, causing the arrogant individual to unintentionally strike one of his own allies. Seizing the opportunity, Lewis confidently declared that he had not harmed anyone and boasted about having witnesses to corroborate his claims. The heated argument persisted among among the individuals, their confusion evident as they struggled to comprehend the events that had just unfolded. Lewis reaches out and gently brushes against one of their legs. Without hesitation, he swiftly targeted another of the troublemakers with a well-aimed kick. Their confusion deepened with each passing moment. The protagonist confronts yet another insolent individual. The protagonist experiences an unsettling sensation coursing through his entire body. Shortly thereafter, they found themselves injured and thoroughly bewildered. Whispers circulated among the crowd, placing the blame squarely on the shoulders of their main protagonist. However, Lewis insisted that he had not taken any action and believed he should not be held accountable for the situation. Then one of them boldly labeled Lewis a monster. This infuriated the young man. However, in that moment, the gentle boy resolved to take action. Lewis came to the understanding that taking any further action would be unwise. He suggested that if the students had grievances, they should collectively approach the principal to voice their concerns. The group of troublemakers swiftly altered their decision, choosing to flee without a moment's hesitation. Lewis warmly introduced himself to his new roommate, eager to foster a friendly connection. He remained silent, offering no response. However, the assortment of items he was hauling suggested that his name was likely Kara. Lewis found himself enveloped in a haze of uncertainty. Suddenly, the door slammed shut, severing any chance of conversation with him. The protagonist found the man peculiar, as he brazenly disregarded Lewis entirely. Despite being only the first day at the academy, the intensity was overwhelming. In the dimly lit hallways, a figure lurked, conspiring a scheme that radiated danger and raised suspicion. The video drew to a close at this point. If the audience enjoyed the experience, the protagonist encouraged them to express their appreciation with a like, promising to return for another encounter in the future. He bid farewell with a simple yet poignant goodbye.